Hello there, YouTube. Those of you who are aware of UK politics, which won't be many of you, will be aware of the government's current use of a complete non-issue to distract from the fact they are fucking up our economy and putting people out of work. Yes, this non-issue would be gay marriage. Just to give you some context, Britain currently has kind of a separate but equal system where you have civil partnerships and regular marriages. What they want to do is just change the name of the civil partnership to say it's a marriage. And seeing as this is a 45% atheist country, in the most recent data we have, and amongst the religious population, we have a tiny minority of fundies who actually care about wanting to get into other people's lives. The state wanted to get into other people's lives. They're a really, really tiny minority. And yet they're big enough that the government can use this as a distraction, and they're bringing up all the big guns. Funnily enough, my local MP, David Burrows, has decided to wake up for this issue and has written a rather nasty letter to all Christians in the borough. And it's full of the usual fallacies and rather silly analogies that you get. I thought I'd take some time to basically go through all the cliched arguments against gay marriage and blow them apart one by one. So let's get going. Those of you who know me a bit better may be a bit surprised to see this video among the thoughts of no one in particular. Why? Because at several occasions I have voiced my objection to the idea of a legal recognition of marriage at all. I have no problem with people getting married, I just don't believe it is any business of the government. I do not believe there should be any special benefits whatsoever. I mean, admittedly, we've got very few of them left in the UK. There is a tax evasion strategy through it, but that's about it. But I really think it's just like an IOU. It should have no place in law. In fact, that's insulting to an IOU. Yeah, so why am I making this video going after these people who won't want these rights to be extended? Because I believe if you're going to be stupid enough to have a state recognition, you may as well make it equal state recognition, and that's just the problem with it. As I have said to several fundy friends of mine, the best way if you want to preserve the sanctity of marriage is to abolish the 1745 Marriage Registration Act. It might sound like a convoluted way of doing things, but if you want to have your own little definition of marriage, best way is for there not to be a legal definition at all. This is usually the last argument a fundy will use because it's the most easily debunked. Within the Bible text, you have a lot through the Old Testament and to some extent through the New. You have polygamy, you have very odd relationships all over the place. the one of my favourite observations is that Jesus himself hung out with 12 swarthy men and a prostitute, but that's beside the point. Um, it's if you're going to go on about biblical definition of marriage, there is pretty much none. Um, with the exception of the original Adam and Eve, although even with Adam and Eve in the original edition, pre revision of the Torah, the Adam's first wife Lilith appears, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. Anyhow, yeah, that's another story for another time. But anyhow, point is, you cannot say the Bible defines one man, one woman, because, as I said, it's full of polygamy. It's full of very strange relationships, and doesn't necessarily portray these as in a particularly bad light. You just need to look at Samuel and his mother, and there's a bit of rivalry between the two wives, but it's not particularly portrayed as being anything wrong that there are two wives. So yeah, that's the easy one. Now on to the more tricky stuff. Talk about an ignorance of history. Just for a bit of context as to exactly what traditional marriage has done in history, in particular the history of the British Isles, we had 117 years of war with France over a marriage issue. Probably several other dynastic issues around the world that were involved basically some sort of infidelity and or a betrothal broken or something like that, and it started a war in which thousands died because the royals were touchy like that. Yeah, so you've got that. It's obviously using history as an example. We also have the fact that our Reformation was entirely caused by the failure of a marriage. So, yes, massive religious schism that even today has its effects in Ireland and other places. Which, yeah, although I'll admit the fundies are doing a good job getting Catholics and Protestants together, if only in a sort of an unholy alliance of hate. But yeah. So we have that issue. We have the issue that until the Married Women's Property Act, basically women were property of men, and that abuse, there's a whole line of abuses on that line in that section of history. We have further on, rape within marriage was not illegal until 1981, and yes, there are still police officers serving lawyers who would actually deny that it still is properly and still very old-fashioned in that way. And some of them are actually atheists. They would say that if you're stupid enough to get married, that's a very, very disgusting view. I won't go there. So yeah, on top of that, we have the fact that the vast majority of psychopaths, serial killers, and things, contrary to a lot of psychological data, very few of them actually came from broken homes or untraditional families. Most of them came from the traditional family. Couple this with the fact that humans are not monogamous by nature. There's well, the vast majority anyway. One of the ways you can get it to work, and indeed, there are many happy couples, but there is a problem here, and that is the culture, whether religious or secular, of the nation in general is very pushy to make everyone conform to this ideal, which is stupid, because not everybody is exactly the same. Not everybody is going to be comfortable with that kind of relationship. I know I wouldn't. So yeah, it's an extremely stupid idea, and an extremely stupid culture that really needs to be fought. And by giving your tax evasion strategies to married couples, you're only perpetuating this. Oh, sorry, I was going off on a tangent there. Basically, if you're only going to go for the traditional set, you are perpetuating if you're going to only give the legal benefits to a traditional marriage, you are essentially reinforcing a culture that has been proven objectively to be very destructive and very detrimental to our society. Again, the supposed traditionalists show their ignorance of history. Yes, the legal push has been only post legalization of homosexuality. However, the spiritual pressure that's been applied, or recognition within the church, dates back to when homosexuality was a capital offence. Back in the sort of 1700s, my area of speciality at the moment, we had groups within the church of relatively respectable ministers making arguments for it. The Quakers have pretty much always, and Unitarians have pretty much always accepted it, and indeed it was the Quakers who performed the first civil partnership recognition ceremony in a religious institution, and wrote their first liturgy for it, which was incredible as a progressive step. However, we're so this issue's been in there for several hundred years, and what's even more interesting is that pre-Reformation, the Catholic Church actually had gay marriage in it. Admittedly, you had to pay extra, and it was all part of the indulgences thing. But it was there. Post Luther is the time the real homophobia of the church started, because it wasn't like prostitution. It wasn't elite. There was a difference under Catholic Britain. There was a difference between a legal offence and a moral offence, and it was pretty much solidly a moral offence. It wasn't actually punishable. If it was punishable pretty much the same way as adultery, and it was most likely a fine of some kind. It wasn't particularly recognised as a crime until the rather epically named Buggery Act under Thomas Cromwell's administration as Lord Chancellor. And Cromwell, of course, shared the rather disgusting homophobia of Martin Luther and the other big shots in the Reformation. Anyhow, so if you're going to make that argument in response to the argument that this is just interracial, real, just like interracial marriage in the US, be prepared for that argument because of the fact it's correct. You haven't really homophobia in the church is a more recent thing than you would believe. It's a bit like the whole anti-abortion thing. That's only been around since it got safe enough that a woman could survive an abortion, which says a lot about fundyism. Really? I suggest you talk to an anthropologist about that, or in fact any person who looks at nature in any way, shape, or form, because yes, it's all over the place in the natural world. Yes, I shall link Hannibal's channel. He's an anthropologist below for more information about that. However, yes, calling anything unnatural, well, if you're going to use that argument, you may as well give up on modern technology. You may as well give up on a lot of things that science and sort of the development of humankind has given us. And yeah, so it's probably the most stupid of all the arguments ever put forward. I'm not going to debunk the main reason that they really have they never use, especially in a secular country like mine, which is that homosexuality is a sin. Because I think Glut's already thoroughly debunked that with his Christians versus Paulites video. You probably find if you look through all his channels. It'll take you a while, but yeah, it's a very good and to the point video. Anyhow, fundies. The conclusion is that fundies are talking out their arse, are shockingly ignorant of the history of not only the society they are trying to control, but the church they're in. So, and the belief system they're in. So, yeah, don't bother listening to these people. As for the issue itself, as I said, it is a smokescreen to the more important issue, that is, people are at work, people are suffering, people are starving. This country is involved in 3 pointless wars and possibly a 4th coming up. We need to evade that. So yes, we're mad as hell. We're not going to take any more. And really, this smokescreen is a pretty poor attempt to defuse that.